Years ago, I stood outside a meeting hall somewhere and I saw a group of people standing around in a circle chanting. They had signs and they were chanting the words, "Racists and fascists have no right to speak or organize." And it struck me that they didn't understand what free speech was all about. First of all, how do you know who is or isn't a racist or a fascist unless and until you hear them? And you can decide for yourself whether they're racists or fascists. And who's to say that racists and fascists should have no right to speak or organize, except perhaps a communist or someone else who believes they don't like what they have to say? First of all, there has to be a right to hear. Secondly, there has to be a right for everyone to be heard, including racists and fascists. Because the minute that I can silence someone I don't like to hear because I don't like what they have to say, is the minute that I have control over someone else's right to speech. Everybody wants that power, but nobody should have it. I recently have looked at an article in the Saanich News. Of course, I live in Saanich, British Columbia. But it's the same controversy all over the world, so this doesn't just limit itself to Saanich, British Columbia on Vancouver Island. It's the same everywhere. And there's a sign that says full access to free abortion, and then there's a girl who's saying pro-life, human rights for all, underlined, human beings. And I found it interesting that on the campus, where you'd expect most people to be free to express their opinions, the campus student council has prohibited a group from advocating for life and against abortion on the grounds that their opinions are harassment. And because those people's opinions irritate somebody else's opinion, they have the power to call it harassment. All it boils down to is the political power to control what is open in the marketplace of ideas for consideration. I'm going to just look at a part of the article that is particularly interesting, where a young girl, I won't mention her name, and she says, "I think whenever you invite a speaker to campus who's going to compare women who have abortions to those who commit genocide, it's absolutely harassment." Well, first of all, you'll notice how they've loaded the question with a presumption that is not necessarily true in the first place. That is that the speaker was comparing women who have abortions to those who commit genocide. Therefore, it would be harassment of all women. But it's only women who do the specific act of having an abortion that is compared to genocide. And whether that's a good or bad comparison, please note that it only applies to women or men or anyone else who do a specific act. That is not a directed comment against all women by any means. The presumption is, on the part of this speaker, that anyone who opposes abortion therefore opposes all women. That's a false premise. It is in effect an argument that is an absurdity, but it includes within itself the bias of its own conclusion, and it supports its own conclusion with its own bias, which is of course a circular argument. The attack upon a particular person or member of a sex who does a specific act, be it rape for instance, if it was to be said that someone who compares a rapist to someone who commits genocide, it wouldn't apply to all men, any more than a comment against abortion applies to all women, because of course many abortionists are not women at all. It's a criticism of a form of conduct. Whether it's a right or wrong criticism remains to be seen, should be open for debate. But to accuse anyone who speaks against abortion and who compares it to genocide to being a harassment is just to say, it bothers me, therefore shut up. And that's the process that I think is most dangerous to the free exchange of ideas all over the world. It comes down to people who deny the Holocaust, people who put up Mohammed cartoons. It applies to people who say anything controversial, and in fact it applies to anyone who has anything at all important to say, because it's always going to be controversial. It's always going to offend somebody. It's always going to be somebody saying, "That's harassment. I don't like that. Shut up." And if we don't stand up for the right to hear every point of view, whether it's Holocaust denial, whether it's racists or fascists or communists or anyone of any persuasion, any point of view, unless and until we hear them before we judge them, we will never have an ability to make an intelligent decision at all. We might as well check our brains at the door, so to speak, because we won't need them. We'll just be listening to whoever has the most power to shut up their opponent. That'll be a very sad world. Let's realize that what happens in Saanich and happened in this little controversy in a little university called University of Victoria is the same battle everywhere in the world, and let's take a firm stand for freedom of speech. Thank you. I'm Doug Christie here in Saanich, British Columbia on, looks like the 6th of March 2010.